and soul were never meant to own what you cared out for, what you cared out for. We die alone, we'll all die young. What you cared out for, what you cared out from. Snow glistening on the ledge, whiskey on the bed. Shake it out and light a cigarette. I'll miss me when you wish you wanna ride. Shake me all out if I'm wrong for you, and shake it all out when I'm gone. For you. Is the devil so bad if he cries in his sleep while the earth turns and his kids learn to say forget you? They don't love you. Does the devil get scared if she dies in her dreams where the earth burns? She cries 'cause she's nothing like you. She like you. What do you want from a devil like me? Devil like me. See, the devil don't mean to be well. He just regrettably forgets to exceed expectation. Holes riddle in your head, little bit of lead. Shake it out and line a silhouette. I'll miss me when you wish you weren't kind of glad. Shake me all out when you're done. For you, and shake it all out when I'm gone. For you. Is the devil so bad if he cries in his sleep while the earth turns and his kids learn to say forget you? They don't love you. Does the devil get scared if she dies in her dreams where the earth burns? She cries 'cause she's nothing like you. She like you. What do you want from a devil like me? Am I like you?
And shalom, everyone. Shalom. I want to welcome everyone to King James Bible University Precept Mastery. I'm Elder Michael Johnson, the pastor over here with King James Bible University and also with House of the Lost Sheep of Israel. And before we actually get started, I do want to make a quick announcement. I seen a post come up earlier, and what I'm asking is this, because this becomes irritating, where people want to put questions in there while I'm teaching. And they even sit there and they even made a statement where they're not going to ask any questions based on them feeling they was ostracized by the mediators or the moderators. So what I want to do, I want to let everybody know I got to be very upfront here about what's going on. What I want people to clearly understand is this. Many of us had came from a church setting, a 100% church setting. And all I want to ask you is one question. And I want people to actually put in the comment section there. I'm not going to put this in a poll. I'm going to put it there. How many people sit there in the middle of a preacher preaching his message, and you sat there and then you decide to ask him a question so he can stop preaching his message for him to answer you? How many times have you done that? How many people has done that? To sit there to have the pastor or that preacher of that building stop to answer a question because you have a question. You're gonna see no pop up everywhere. The reason why is you want to give respect to them, but then over here you feel we should answer and stop and answer your question. So you're not being ostracized, because we made this clear the first time. They tell you all the time. They'll sit there and say, don't put in your personal things. I open up the Zoom all the time. All the time. I'll open this up for you to ask questions, not to sit there in the middle of a teaching to ask the question. That never happens. But what happened is when we go in the back, the same people who ask the questions on the front, they don't come in the back to ask the question. But then they want me to answer the question in the middle of a teaching. They want me to shut down what I'm doing and want me to answer them. This is problem one. Problem two. People ask to sit there and they ask to pray openly here. And I made, again, this abundantly clear. If I don't know you and we don't know where you're coming from, or if your child, your husband, your wife, or whoever you are, if you're not part of this here and you part of a Christian community, I do not pray for those, because what that's doing, that's mixing my God with their God. I don't do that. So again, I'm asking people again, because the moderator is going to keep doing what they do. I love what they're doing and I commend them for what they do. But the main thing is, don't come here thinking you're going to direct a way of something, or you doing hidden messages, or you being passive progressive in a certain way. I don't appreciate it. I think it's disrespectful. And they when they do this, they're doing it for a reason, because we open up Zoom all the time for questions and people just choose not to come back there to ask the question, but then they want to ask the question on the front. Highly irritating. Highly irritating. And you would give all the respect to somebody who's teaching you a false doctrine, but then you don't want to give no respect to somebody who's sitting there teaching you Bible. That's 100% disrespectful. 100%. I'm very open about what I do. I'm very open about what I say. When people put stuff in the chat openly, I will answer you openly. I'm not that type of pastor where I'm just going to pass over something and then just let it happen and I move on and like it's not going to be true. I'm going to address it. I address it right then, because one is disrespectful, and we're here to learn. We're not here to sit there to say, well, I need him to answer this. I need him to answer that. I need him to answer this. And you ask the question in the middle of a teaching. And I ask people right at the end, if you have any questions, we're going to Zoom. And most people will say no. And when we don't, I get emails asking the question. And then you got 100% chance I'm not going to answer it, because I opened it up for you and you chose not to accept it. Or you chose, you don't want everybody to know what your question is. One thing, like I said, we have many people come here from different locations. The same thing we have, same problem we running into with people with the baptism. If you're not here, and a lot of people here, they don't sign in. A lot of people here just watch. And then later on, when you send me a question and we don't know the name, you can say you've been watching us for 4 or 5 years, 6 years, 10 years, however long you've been watching. But if you don't sign in because you like to float around and you like to be elsewhere, then when you come to me asking me a question, you're asking me for prayer, you're asking me for baptism, anything else, and we don't know who you are, because the way we know who people is, because they in the chat, because they in Zoom. This is how we know who people are. And once we know that, now we can deal with you as a brother, as a sister. But if I don't know you, don't think I'm going to sit there and now I don't know you. You just send me an email. I've been watching you for 3 years. Can you help me? I don't know you. We don't work that way because we don't know where you coming from. We don't know where your stance really is. That's why I do what I do. I hold to what I hold to. So I'm just letting people know that. But the same thing is, the same person who put that in there, you need to think about what you put in there. And don't be putting that in there, because when they sit there and they tell you no personal comments, that's what we mean. No personal comments. They ask these things because here we learn. We're not here to sit there for people to read the chat to see what you're trying to start a conversation on the side. We're not here we're here to learn the word of God. That's what we're here to do. So that pet peeve, and I'm done. But we're here to deal with this here. We're going to look at Lucifer, the fallen angel, something that we did last week, this past Sabbath. And with this past Sabbath, with this past Sabbath, when we did this, we was telling you about Lucifer, letting you know who Lucifer is and what he's about. So we're going to do a preceptual study, meaning we're going to also go and we're going to put all these things in the precept on a lot of things that we have taught. But we want to make sure a lot of information you're going to be getting today is a lot of information where I normally have you to do the studies. But since we had questions on this past Sabbath, and as today, we're just going to go through, we're going to find out a lot of things. So make sure you have your pencils, your papers, because you're going to find out a lot of new things on what I want you to see and how I want you to understand it, to where you can go through the Bible and you're going to now not be able to trip or wrestle with not understanding what you're reading, but you will have full understanding of what's going on. So first thing I want you guys to do is to put this in there. I want you to get you a piece of paper. Now, everybody who had a preceptors, once I finish this, you will be getting that, and then we can have everybody who has a preceptor and who already, the team already has your email, they'll be sent out to you guys automatically. But the main thing is this. I want you to put on a piece of paper. I want you to put the beginning. I want you to write the beginning, Lucifer's position in heaven. I want you to put that on there, because we're going to find out a lot of things that you probably didn't know, but we're going to find them out here today. So with that, Lucifer's position in heaven, now we want to know right up under that, we want to put a dot, and we want to put who was Lucifer, because it's an introduction to his original role. Who was Lucifer? So we know Adam was mankind. It's a man and a woman. But you can see it never says Lucifer's name until you get to Isaiah. So we got to remember he was a state of a celestial being within the spirit. So before his fall, Lucifer was a created being unparalleled in beauty and intelligence. And he stood out among the heavenly hosts, not merely because of his appearance, but it was also due to his position. This I want to make sure everybody understand. So let's get understanding, and we're going to find out a lot of things what's going on here. And then we're going to come back, we're going to put them in the preceptor. So let's look at this all together. We want to look at the position and what happened. We have to look at this in a chronological order and really understand what was happening. So why he was put in this position, because it's telling you right here in Genesis chapter 1, we're going to look at verse 28. It's telling you, and God blessed them, and God gave wisdom to them. And he said unto them, be fruitful, including multiply, including replenish the earth, including subdue it, including have dominion over the fish of the sea, including over the fowl of the air, including over every living thing that moves upon the earth. He's telling you a lot. He's giving you a lot of information. So this is the spiritual understanding that I want you to see, and why I want to make sure that you understand where we're coming from. Because beyond this immediate physical directive to populate and govern the earth, this verse spiritually signifies a mandate given to Lucifer, that his messengers, as he taught, to spread the word in the light of God. That's what this was for. So the reason why it says be fruitful. Be fruitful. We want to understand that. Be fruitful. This is being understood spiritually as cultivating the spiritual fruits within oneself and others. So be fruitful. You're going to spread love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness. That's what you're going to do. This is what he's telling you. He also said multiply. He was making sure it multiply, which means is an act of evangelizing and expanding the flock, not just numerically, but also in the terms of depth or understanding of God's word. He wants you to multiply that understanding. This is why he gave them wisdom. And one of the key things you have to keep in mind, as he said everything else, the main thing I want you to really pay attention to, he said had dominion. Dominion. This represents the spiritual authority that's granted to God, that he granted to his people to overcome these worldly temptations, challenges, reflecting God's light in the world, and often shrouded in darkness. That's what this is all talking about. This is what this is talking about. But he made sure some things was also in place. And you see why we have to hit precepts to understand some of the things what he was talking about. Because he said one thing here, we'll see where Peter said this, and Peter made sure this was clear. Because we are to spread that love, joy, and everything else what we had just said. But he says neither comparing being lords over God's heritage, but being examples to the flock. You see how he said, but you have some people don't do this. See, not trying to be some God, but you have some people who resist. They withstand all that is called God. That's your key. So all that is called God, we're going to see this already, and we're going to go through it to why we see why it would happen even with Adam and with Lucifer. Because to understand this context, we got to look at 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, and we're going to look at verse 3. We're going to start there. We're going to start here. And it's telling you right up front. It says, let no man, man, or woman, deceive you by any means, for that day should not come, except there come a falling away first, and that man or woman of sin should be revealed, the son of perdition. We're going to find out a lot of stuff that's here. So we know this man of sin, the son of perdition, what he did, he exalts himself. He exalts himself above all that is called God. We're going to see this right in the next verse. Because he opposes, he withstands, is what we were saying. Who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God. All that is called God. That's why we hold to this. So this implies every deity, any object, worship, even authority, in every power, whether in heavenly or earthly, people may be revered. This is what this is getting into. This is not limited to just deities or religious entities, but it extends to everything that is revered, idolized, and placed in a position of absolute authority in the hearts and minds of people. It's more in a contemporary context that can be related to worldly constructs like wealth, power, fame, even ideologies. These essential things that challenges and attempts to exert authority over Jehovah's rightful place as a sovereign creator and guide. Everybody follow what I'm saying? I want to make sure everybody understands exactly what I'm saying. Some people are not going to understand this because they're going to hold to a Christian theology, and that's fine. They just at the wrong place. They just don't know it. Here we learn spiritually. So we want to understand that what people will do with these ideologies. So a spiritual journey is the understanding of the phrase that underscores the importance of ensuring that one's reverence and worship are directed solely and only towards Jehovah, the shepherd of Israel. It serves as a reminder that any entity, the concept or idea that tries to elevate themselves above Jehovah or attempts to replace him in the hearts of the followers and stepping into a domain of all that is called God. So such entities or these ideas must be approached with caution to maintain spiritual integrity. That's the direct relationship with the true Creator. So this aligns with the commandments of the Bible, where he tells you, even in Exodus chapter 20, verse 3, which we already have it over here, and they say, thou shalt have no other gods before me. You don't have no other gods before me. This is where the issue is. So throughout history, humanity has strived to stand and connect with the Spirit of God, Jehovah. But one way humans have tried to do this by constructing edifices, these monumental structures, and they deem them as houses of God. They deem them as houses of God, and that's where they went left. So as they deem them houses of God, now while the intentions might originate from a place of reverence, it often becomes a symbolic act of going beyond honoring Jehovah, and it becomes a manifestation of a human ambition and a desire to exercise dominion over spiritual matters. This is why 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and verse 4 is so important. It says, who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God, or that is worshipped, so that he as God sit in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. That's why this is so important. So we can see here, he sits in the temple of God, showing himself that he's God. So the temple can both be literal structure and symbolic representation of an institution, the ideology where God is supposed to be the center. But the boldness to declare oneself God while seated in such temple is a profound act of pride and defiance against the true Creator. In fact, let's look at something. I want to show you something. Now, all these, don't worry about, we're going to come back, we're going to put them in the Preceptor. But I want to make sure we get a better understanding on what happened to Lucifer and why we're looking at this. We're going to take him piece by piece. In Wisdom of Solomon chapter 14, but we're going to look at verse 8. And it's telling us this to make sure it's clear. It says, but that which is made with hands is cursed. So this building, this structure is made with hands. This deity, this idol, whatever you have built with hands, is cursed, as well as he that made it. He, because he made it, in it, because being corruptible, it was called God. He's holding you responsible. He's holding us responsible. So this telling you, so the mention of devising of idols is the beginning of a spiritual fornication. Idolatry is not limited to a mere statues, but it includes attributing to divine qualities of human structures. These places that we call the house of God, the house of Christ. We call these buildings all these religious matters. These objects become the misguiding for reverence. In fact, it even gets more into this, and it shows you what we did. And this is why we have to pay real close attention on how things happen. In Ezekiel chapter 16, we're going to look at verse 24. We're going to pay attention to what's happening here. And it's already how it says, thou hast built unto thee an eminent place, and thou hast made thee a high place on every street. So you shouldn't be surprised, and you shouldn't worry about that you see church houses on every street, and you see them you see sometimes 2 or 3 on the same block. You should never be surprised to see this, because he's telling you this is already happening. This was written thousands of years ago, but you see, he's telling you this what was going to be happening. He goes more, he says, thou hast built thy high place on every head of the way, meaning on every corner, and thou hast made thy beauty, which is the ways of God, the laws of God, to be abhorred, to be hated. And thou hast opened thy feet, thy desires, to everyone that passeth by, to multiply thy whoredoms. This is what they have done. This is clear. So these high places is used as an allegorical representation of man-made institutions, structures, the human attempt to access and define the spiritual God in their own terms without understanding or guidance from Jehovah himself. You see it here. When you see this here in what he's saying, all these structures they have done, I want to show you something. All these structures they have done. We're going to look at two places over here. We're going to look at Hebrews chapter 9, look at verse 24. It's telling you, for Christ has not entered into holy places made with hands. Because why? Because it's cursed, which are figures of the truth. But in heaven itself is now appeared in the presence of God for us. So it's cursed. He's telling you already it's cursed. So the same thing as people say, well, I can take God's in me and I can take it in there. Why God going to go into a cursed thing with you? And he's telling you in his own scripture, it's cursed. So how are you going to take him inside of a building and he's telling you that was made with hands is cursed? But you saying, well, God got him. Now you want to strong arm God. Well, I'm going to take him in there with me. Are you serious? Well, God's in me. No, he's not in you. You saying he's in you, but he's not in you. Because when you sitting there saying you got God in you and you can take God into this building, and he says, Christ is not entered into holy places made with hands, which are figures of the truth. You're using this building and you saying that this is a place of God. This is our problem. This is the issue that we have. This is why we have these kind of problems all the time. It gets better with here as we dig a little bit deeper. We look at Acts and we're going to look at chapter 17. Acts 17 verse 24 is highlighted too. It says, God that made the worlds and all things therein, seeing that he is the creator of heaven and earth, dwelling not in temples made with hands. Why? Because it's cursed. That which is made with hands is cursed, as well as he that made it. Because he made it and being corruptible, it was called God. So you tell me, how can you possibly do this? But this is something that Lucifer was doing himself in his messengers. We're going to find out a lot of this. So this is making the scriptures extremely clear. It reiterates that God is not in those buildings as Christ is not in those buildings. So I don't care what building you're going in, saying you're going in there learning about God. You're not going in there learning about anything because it's a standard location where they sitting there saying where God is and he's not. So when you want to understand things spiritually, these scriptures warn us against the misuse, one, of authority. Lucifer had that. We understand it clearly. It's warning us against the misuse of authority, such as confusion and one need for those places and positions to act as beacons of light, guiding others through the dominance and through the exemplification. God's people are described as a heritage. That's what he tells you. Not being lords over God's heritage, meaning a treasured possession. We need to understand that clearly, that illuminated path of righteousness, those things in what he entrusted to us to where we are to be their guidance, like the bearers of light, are not to be misused for their position or for personal gain or pride, but rather they should illuminate the path of righteousness, not for others to follow this unrighteous way. They become a reflection of God's own guidance and care. So when we're looking at both verses, we can go right back to Genesis chapter 1, verse 28. It says, and God blessed them. God gave wisdom to them. He bestowed upon them authority. Why you see even with 1 Peter, we're going to go back to 1 Peter to make sure we got everything there. 1 Peter chapter 5, looking at verse 3. It says, neither being lords over God's heritage, but he blessed them to be fruitful and to be examples to the flock. He blessed them to do this. Be fruitful, subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea and have over the fowls of the air and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. Neither being as lords over God's heritage, but being examples to the flock. This provides the framework, how we can execute authority and humility and grace in the celestial mind where the chosen by God to feed his people with knowledge, understanding, and not just messengers of God, but we being luminaries, bearers of light. This task of guiding Jehovah's flock, they're not ours. We're the feeders towards the eternal glow of God, showing God's love, His wisdom, and we show them the illuminated path, guiding others towards the deeper relationship with JEHOVAH, the Spirit of God, the Shepherd of Israel. Everybody understand that? Everybody should understand that, what we just went through. Because we're going to keep moving forward, but making sure everybody understands it. Because we got to understand a few things. Because Lucifer was a bearer of light. We're going to find out some things there. He was a bearer of light. But we're going to understand what was happening and why it was happening this way. Let's look at this a little bit closer, because when we're looking at the celestial tapestry of the scriptures, this symbolic narrative and shedding light on these various facets of Lucifer's existence, it has a broader spiritual cosmos. He was to assist each and every one of us in navigating this vast expanse. So we are at this critical approach where these scriptures, with the receptive heart and discerning mind, allowing the scriptures, the Spirit of God, to guide us. To guide us. I want you to think about that. That's what it was for. The scriptures have numerous entities where it depict not just the manifestation roles, but their own original ultimate destinies. For one such entity is Lucifer. His story is a testament to a dual nature and free will, with the potential to ascension of a divine harmony or descent into discord. And actually, Paul even warns us of this. I want to show you this. Paul warns us of this. Actually, thinking about it, let's go to it, because we're going to add all this to it. And we're going to look at 2 Corinthians chapter 11, but we're going to look at verse 14. It's telling us right over here. It says, "And no marvel, for Satan himself." We're going to find out some real interesting things about him. For Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light, indicating that his appearance can be deceptive. This is why a lot of times you'll run into these men that be in buildings. Most time they're talking, "Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, this." They're always sitting there because they want an appear, and they want to tell you these things to where you say, "Oh, this is a man of God." They're appearing as angels of light. But it's telling you, for Satan himself does this. If Satan come to you really strong, and then you're gonna shy away. But if he come to you real meek and, "Thank you, Lord, thank you, Jesus, thank you this, thank you that, thank you, hey, thank you, Holy Spirit," they're doing all these things, and you just see he gets you. He gets you right there. So we want to look at that a little bit closer. See, the scriptures tells us exactly where it was going, indicating that appearance can be deceptive. And seeing that it's luminous and righteous on the surface might be harboring intentions contrary to the will of the Creator. That's what our issue is. Such path of Lucifer, who's supposed to be this bearer of light. I'm telling you, you have to cry, you have to laugh so you won't cry. He's supposed to be this bearer of light. Literally what his name means. That's the crazy part. His name means this. He got a couple other meanings, but his name is the bearer of light. Son of the morning. Lucifer is, we'll get to that. We'll get to it. But it's indicating his appearance was deceptive. In such a path that Lucifer intentionally, he was being in this high standing enveloped in the wisdom and perfection. Why? He got it from God. His presence in the heavenly realms and likened these precious stones was depicted. Actually, I'm going to show you something here. We're going to look at something. I want to put some things together where we can't get around them. We're going to look at Ezekiel chapter 28. Same thing we were doing last week. Chapter 28, we're going to look at verse 13. We're going to put some things here where we can't get around them. We're going to use that one. I want to change this to yellow. And we're going to look at that one. I want to use that one, but I want to grab one more. We're going to go over here. We're going to grab one more. We're going to look at Psalms. We're going to look at Psalms chapter 55. Because I want to put some things there where we can't get around it. We're going to start at verse 12. So we got those. And I want to show you what happened. Because it's telling you right here, it says, thou hast been in the garden in the Eden, thou hast been in Eden, the garden of God. Yeah, because who put us? He put us there. Every precious stone was thy covering. The sardis, the topaz, and the diamond, the beryl, the onyx, and the jasper, the sapphire, the emerald, the carbuncle, and gold, the workmanship of thy tabrets and thy pipes was prepared in thee that day that was created. Right, because he gave us knowledge of it. He gave us knowledge to give to his people. We received this knowledge to give to his people. But we have to look at what happened. The sentiments echoes Psalms 55:12 because it tells you Satan appeared as an angel of light. It was not an enemy that reapproached me. Then I could abort it. If he would have came very strong, and actually we're going to look at something. And I want to make sure people can put this in the chat also. If people approached you and telling you have to do this, you better be giving 10%, you better be doing this, you better be doing that, you better be doing it, everything you better be doing, you got to be doing this, you got to be doing that, you got to be doing this, don't do this, God gonna get you. Would you sit there? Would you sit there? And he telling you everything you better do, and you better listen to them. Whatever he say goes. Would you sit there and still sit up under that person? You see the answers coming in there clearly. No, you're not going to do it. It don't make any sense. The reason why it don't make any sense, so this is why Satan himself transformed into an angel of light. He's going to come to you real meek. He's going to come to you real humble. He's not going to approach you as like an enemy. This is why I said it was not an enemy that reapproached me. Then I could abort it. Neither was he that hated me that did magnify himself against me. This is a full thought. This is why he did this. He has to come to you really meek. He comes to you to where you don't believe that intention is going to happen. He said, then I would have hid myself from him. Yeah, you'd cut him off. You wouldn't deal with him no more. You see what's happening here. And he says, but it was thou, a man of my equal. It was nothing but a man with the spirit of Satan in him. We took sweet counsel together. We walked in the house of God in company. Exactly what happened. Exactly what happened. So with this pride, we have to understand how this depicts the profound sense of betrayal, how one can consider this close parallel Lucifer deviation from his divine purpose. From his divine purpose. This is key. Why is this so key? Because it tells you that scriptures cannot be broken. So since we know it can't be broken, we're looking at Proverbs chapter 16, but we're going to pick this up at verse 18. And it's telling you, it says, pride goeth before destruction and the haughty spirit before a fall. I'm telling you. We should really watch what we do. The offer of wisdom in this trajectory. Pride goeth before destruction. It serves as a stark reminder of the perils of arrogance and self-exhortation where we exalt ourselves. And this is why Lucifer has the problem he has. We'll find this in Isaiah chapter 14. We're going to look at verse 13. And we'll see what he's telling. And it's already, it says, for thou hast said in thy heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars, the teachers of God. And I will sit on the mount of the congregation on the sides of the north. I'll be over there. I'm going to be over there. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds, and I will be like the Most High. I'm going to be like God. We just seen this. We just seen this in 2 Thessalonians. We just seen it. He exalts his throne above God's, teaching this. With God, we're supposed to be teaching truth, but he's not doing with this. He has the truth, but he had also got some lies from Satan. So through this initial role as being a light bearer, was this reflected spender of this glory of God. However, his eternal shift towards self-worship led him away from the divine purpose of God. That's what happened. Let's build on it, because we're gonna come back. We're gonna put it all in the Preceptor. We're gonna section it out, because we got to section it all out. But we want to find out exactly how everything happened. In Second Address, we're gonna pick this up at chapter 8, at 8 in verse 21, and we're gonna find out something. It says, "Whose throne is inestimable." Whose throne is inestimable, whose glory may not be comprehended, before whom the host of angels, the host of messengers stand with trembling. Wow. That's serious. That's a serious statement. This further underscores the struggle between flesh and spirit, whose throne is inestimable, meaning it's precious. That's all this means. Where am I? Right here. This. Inestimable. This telling you it's precious. That's what how that moves. That's precious. It says, whose throne is precious, whose glory is not to be comprehended. That's what this actually is saying. Paleo, that's what this is saying. Whose glory may not be comprehended, before whom the host of angels, the messengers. So such parallels, being one who endowed this unparalleled gift, the misuse of them, leading us to spiritual degradation. And what happened? So the name Lucifer, so the way of Lucifer means this also the servant of the dawn. Servant of dawn also means this light bearer, morning star. He has these names that's attached to this name, which speaks of his initial divine purpose. He was meant to reflect this radiant, pure light of glory of the Creator. I'm telling you, serving this prominent figure, this celestial realm. However, he subsequent choices of aspirations driven by haughtiness not only did lead him to his downfall, but he became a saddening reminder for each and every one of us to look at. Being created in the image of the Creator, we must remain vigilant, discerning the truth from the light, and be able to discern the difference between light from deceptive matters, and always seeking to align our will with the purpose of the Creator himself. See, as Lucifer was entrusted with this divine purpose that aligned himself closely with this radiant and splendor of the Creator's intent. But before his fall, he was the beacon of God's glorious light. I want you to think about that, how serious that is. He was supposed to be doing all these things. He was the reflection of purity and purification. So with this celestial tapestry, Lucifer was positioned prominently, as if he was dissimilar to the first light that pierced the night veil. Think about that. This is uncomprehendable. This position was not just a testament to his splendor, but is also a significant responsibility. His role was to serve as a conduit, taking this unparalleled brightness of JEHOVAH, bright and channeling through the heavenly realms. His very essence was intertwined with the illumination of wisdom, bingo, understanding, bingo, and not just as the morning star that cast light and guidance on those who was lost in darkness. Lucifer was the guide to elevate the spirits to the heavenly hosts, enhancing their communion with the Creator himself. The harmonious melodies in heaven is there this like a rhythm that enriches by his presence. It's like this tangible testament to the Creator based on his majestic benevolence. I'm talking about this the position this man had. However, such eminence came parallels of pride, self-importance. This is what happens to most of us. His own brilliance, which is mentioned as reflective of his glory, instead he became a source of self-worship. And contrary to the very gift of giving this uplift, when misused, leads one downfall. Lucifer's transformation from a light bearer to to an adversary. That's why he was put out. This is a solemn reminder, and most exalted one can lose sight of true purpose that shifts from the focus of the Creator himself. So this is why we got to understand how this all happened, how all this kicked in. So we got to understand, one, the reflective and the radiant of pure light in the glory of the Creator. And we're going to find some of this, and actually we're going to find some of this, we're going to see this in Revelations. We're going to find some of this information in Revelations chapter 21. We're going to start at verse 23, and we're going to see right here. Because this was with Lucifer. It says, in a city that need no sun, that have no need of the sun, neither of the moon to shine in it, for the glory of God did lighten it, and the Lamb is the light thereof. You don't even need no sun. Light is always. These profound intricacies in these scriptures invite this showing this multiple levels. We need to start by examining scriptures, even carnally drawing connections to the transition into our spiritual significance. See, carnally, we want to hold to something. The book of Genesis act as a creation, with God placing the luminaries. I want to make sure you pay attention to what I'm saying. He made these luminaries. God placed these luminaries, such as the sun, the moon, and the stars. Everybody know that. In the firmament to serve as signs and days and seasons and years. He put a sun, a moon, and stars in the firmament. You can go out there tonight. Somebody might already be night. You can go out there and see them. Look right at them. These are initially showing the physical light sources of the world. So these passages underscores the sovereign power and the intent of the Creator. But when you shift from this verse from Revelation, it's a note to stark contrast of the New Jerusalem that describes have no need of these celestial bodies, the sun, the moon, and the stars. It has no need of it. Why? This city need no sun, has no need for the moon to shine. For the glory of God did lighten it. So the glory of God gonna light everything. This is the basic level of the realm that's profoundly immersed in the divine nature of light sources that become radiant. In the realm of a perpetual day where darkness holds no sway. So when you're looking at this in the spiritual language of the Bible, the celestial bodies like the sun, the moon, and the stars are often employed as metaphors. So I want you to understand metaphors, allegories, in various positions, roles, or status of people. We want to understand that. So we're going to look at the sun. We're going to look at that. And when we look at the sun, it tells us a few things. Sun lets us know a few things. And we want to understand those in its fullness. So when we look at that, we want to understand exactly how we understand it, how we come to it. And when we look at this, the sun, it brings prominence to the celestial body. It provides light during the day. It is used to symbolize dominance, the leading figure or entity in the spiritual context. So it represents kings, rulers, principal leaders. So that's why I'm over here at Genesis chapter 37, verse 9. It's going to tell you about Joseph had a dream. And in the dream, he was talking about the sun, the moon, and the stars, bowing to him. They're symbolizing his father, Jacob. And this is why you're going to see what happened. So we're going to look at this. It says, and Joseph said, and he had a dream and yet another dream, and told it to his brothers and said, remember, I have a dream. I have dreamed a dream more. And remember the sun. You see the sun, he's talking about his daddy. The moon, he's talking about his mama Rachel. And the 11 stars, he's talking about his brothers, made obstinance unto me. Watch how they respond, because they saying the same thing. He told to his father and his brother, and his father rebuked him and said unto him, what is this dream that thou hast dreamed? Shall I, he just said the son, but you see how they understood it spiritually. Shall I, thy mother and thy brother, indeed come and bow ourselves to thee, to the earth? You see what he's saying? He just said the sun, the moon, and the stars start bowing to him. But you see how they related this. It's automatic. Why? Because we have to understand how to understand spiritual things more than carnal things. Carnal things profit you nothing. The moon, which reflects the light of the sun and rules the night. This is the secondary authority or figure. It represents queens, mothers, and secondary leaders. So Joseph's dream mentioned the moon that symbolized his mother Rachel, what I was telling you. The same as the stars, which symbolize the numerous entities of people, multitude of diversity, represented to the children of Israel, leaders and notable figures. Actually, let's go here. It can go here. I didn't think about that. Let's go here. Let's go to Revelation. Look at chapter 1, verse 20. 1:20. And you'll see something here. It says, the mystery of the 7 stars. He's telling that thou sawest on the right hand, and the 7 golden candlesticks, and the 7 stars are the angels. You see, the 7 stars are the angels, the messengers, in the 7 churches, of the 7 churches. In the 7 candlesticks which thou sawest are the 7 churches. So you see how they putting it here. Everything is in an allegorical setup, parables. This is why it's saying that. So as we build on this, we get a better understanding when we look at Revelation chapter 12. And we're going to look at this over in verse 1. And you'll see how this appeared. It says, and there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun. She was clothed with the sun, in the moon under her feet, and upon her crown are 12 stars. You can see how this is symbolizing other things. So this woman clothed with the sun, and the moon was under her feet, and the crown of the 7 stars. Her head is described in the imagery stepped with the symbolism often understood that represents God's chosen people. The sun, the moon, the stars symbolizing different roles and statuses within this chosen community. This is essential to understanding the symbols of context. The entire narrative in this prophetic vision is discerned that the specific meaning or the roles that's meant to convey in these given passages. That's what we got to do. So drawing from the scriptures, we can develop a spiritual dimension. So when we're looking at the light in Genesis can be viewed not just as a physical luminous, but it symbolically is telling you about knowledge, wisdom, and understanding that's granted by God. So that light was the fundamental thing that preceded the creation, the sun, the moon, in the context that is commanded. That's why when you see here, and you look at Genesis chapter 1, verse 28, Genesis 1, and we're going to see this here in verse 28. He said, he blessed him and said, be fruitful. This is what he's saying, be fruitful. And multiply and replenish the earth and subdue it. This embodies the mandate given to Lucifer, armed with the divine light of understanding and dominion to mankind, intended to govern the earth and to align with God's will. That's what he was supposed to do. Relating to this, Lucifer, the light bearer, it parallels everything. Lucifer was embodied with this unparalleled wisdom and beauty, much like the original light that God gave this decree in the phrase of creation. He was entrusted the role and radiant this wisdom throughout this heavenly realm. So when we relating Lucifer, the light bearer, we understand where he's coming from. So when we look at all these together, we take all these together, we put them all together. So when you look at this in Revelation chapter 21, you put them all together in 23. That's why it's saying, in a city that have no need of the sun, neither the moon to shine in it, for the glory of God did lighten it, and the Lamb is the light thereof. This reinforces everything. The knowledge of understanding God's glory remains paramount in the source of illumination. So the spirit of light supersedes any physical light, emphasizing the prominence of God, his glory and wisdom over all else, no matter what. Represents the Christ that stands as a testament, the ultimate sacrifice, the redemption, and together with God, their combined light dispels all shadows. These scriptures collectively paint tapestry and underscores the fundamental role of divine wisdom, understanding the glory of God. This serves as a touching reminder for each and every one of us that the radiant splendor in the celestial bodies is inherent to light of the Creator in the Lamb of God that truly illuminates us all. Do everybody understand what's going on thus far? Do everybody understand really what's going on thus far? This is what we want to make sure of. Do everybody clearly understand what's going on thus far? Okay. See, now the only thing that'll irritate, later on people say they don't get it. Or they have questions about it. So if you say you're understanding it, that's why I can move forward. Because people say they understand it, and later on they say they don't understand it. So then technically what you're doing, you're not just being truthful with me, but you're also not being truthful with God. So when we ask this, we ask clear things on what we want to know. Because what we got to look at before Lucifer fall. Before Lucifer's fall, knowing he was the beacon of God, glorious light, is why it says, "How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer? How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer?" This is interesting. We need to know how he fell. How did he fall? We need to know what's going on here. What happened? More, we need to understand how thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer. So the main thing is we're going to look at something. We're going to look at something. We're going to go here. We're going to look at Ezekiel again. We're going to start there in Ezekiel 28. We're going to pick it up at verse 13. The reason why we want to know, how did he fall? And it tells us, it says, "Thou hast been in the garden of, and eaten the garden of God. Every precious stone was thy covering, the sardius, the topaz, the diamond, the beryl, the onyx, the jasper, the sapphire, the emerald, the carbuncle, the gold, and the workman of thy tabrets was thy pipes was prepared in thee in the day thou was created." But he says something that's really key when we get here in verse 14. "Thou art an anointed cherubim that covered, and I have set thee so. And thou was upon the holy mountain of God. Thou hast walked up and down the midst of stones in fire, in desire. Thou wast perfect in thy ways from the day thou was created till iniquity was found in thee." Till iniquity was found in thee. "By the multitude of thy merchandise, they have filled the midst of thee with violence." Because of the merchandise. Because of the merchandise. They have filled thee with violence. "Thou hast sinned, therefore I will cast thee as profane out of the mountain of God. I will destroy thee, O covering cherub, from the midst of the stones of fire. Thy heart was lifted up because of thy beauty." This is what we do. You can see dudes do this. You can see them on the street corner. They telling everybody they're going to hell and they going to be in the kingdom. Come kiss my feet. You see men in churches telling you, if you want, I'm anointed. If you want God to hear you, you come up here and you give us $1,000 and we'll pray and God will hear your prayer and he'll heal you. Their hearts is lifted up because of their beauty. "Thou hast corrupted thy wisdom by reason of thy brightness. I will cast thee to the ground. I will lay thee before kings, that they may remember thee." This is how serious this gets. Because we got to look at the instance how this intertwined, the illumination of wisdom, understanding, was knowledge of good and evil. Because this is what he chose to do. This is what Satan chose to tell him, and this is what Lucifer decided to eat. Let's look at some of that. In Genesis chapter 2, we're going to look at verse 17. It says, but the tree, the elder of knowledge of good and evil, thou shalt not learn of it. For the day that thou learnest thereof, thou shalt surely die. It's very upfront. And we have to remember something, keep this in mind. Keep this in mind and don't let this one go away. In Galatians chapter 5, looking at verse 9, a little leaven leaveneth the whole lump. All you got to do is learn a little sin, and you're going to leaven the entire lump. All you got to do is know a little of it. You're going to leaven the entire thing. The entire lump. Let's look at something. And all the people who put no, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna set up a teaching session just with you guys. So I'm gonna keep that in there, so I can go back and then I can email you guys to where we can set up a special session for you guys. So don't worry about that part. We'll take care of that. We're gonna look at this in Job chapter 38. In Job 38. And we're going to look at this in verse 7. And he tells it says, when the morning stars sang together. So when these morning teachers, they sang together, and the sons of God shouted for joy. Wow. The reason why we want to hit these certain things is for a certain reason, because we're going to look at this one. We're going to also join that one with Proverbs 4:7. Proverbs 4:7. Wisdom is the principal thing thereof. Get wisdom. And with all thy getting, get understanding. Exactly what we're supposed to be doing. So this problem with the parallel of pride and self-importance is where we had the problem. That's where the problem is. And it's building up why we continually doing this. It's going to continually build. No matter what, because we're going to let this pride get us. In Proverbs chapter 16, verse 8, it says, pride goeth before destruction and a haughty spirit before a fall. Exactly what's going to happen. All behind what we did in Ezekiel chapter 28, verse 6, thy heart was lifted up because of thy beauty, and thou hast corrupted thy wisdom by reason of thy brightness. I will cast thee to the ground. I will lay thee before kings, in the presence of kings, and they may remember thee. This is the problem. This is the problem we have. This is why so many of us sit there and we'll say, oh, we know this, we know that. And all of a sudden we think that we are the main people of God and we do everything that's wrong. This is the main reason why Lucifer transformation was from a bearer of light and goes into right up front into an adversary. He went from a bearer of light to an adversary. Let's build on this. In Revelation chapter 12. Revelation 12, we're going to look at verse 7. And we're going to find out some important things. And this is where you need to make sure you guys are, please have your pencils. Please have your pencils and paper. Please. Because we're going to get some information that's really important. But it tells us this in Revelation chapter 12, verse 7. It says, there was a war in heaven. Michael, who is like God, and his messengers fought against the dragon fought against his angels. We want to understand this. So, main thing is, I want people to write something down, and I want to make sure that you have it. I want you to put heaven. Now, in your keyword dictionary, it says one thing, but I want to make sure that you have what it just means foundationally. Foundation, I want you to understand what it means. Heaven means a separation. So it's telling you, so there was a war in the separation. Yes, it is. Heaven is a separation. The separation. And that Drake, and it goes on more. We're going to look at this. And fought against them, and they prevail not. Neither will their place found any more in heaven. In this separation. It has another meaning, but we're going to find out what's going on. And it's going to tell us this in verse 9. It's going to clarify everything. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan. We're going to find out exactly what they are. which deceiveth the whole world, he was cast out into the earth, and his messengers, those angels, was cast out with him. We want to find out this. So we understand what heaven is. We understand what heaven is. But we want to understand another part, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the world. So this biblical imagery, this dragon, this embodies the opposition of God, representing this chaos, this deceit, and it stands against JEHOVAH, divine order of purpose. We want to understand what this devil is. That's why I say we're going to find out some things which I don't normally use, but since we had got on Lucifer, we have to address these. So devil. It's telling you exactly what it is. It means a slanderer or accuser. That's the devil. He's a slanderer. He can also be an accuser. He has a couple other ones, but that's some of the main ones. He's a slanderer and he's an accuser. Spiritually, it can be seen as force of entity who opposes and accuses and deceives. When considering the devil representation of man, it symbolized to initiate this adversarial and deceptive tendencies that humans might exhibit. So, for instance, you see a man who will act contrary in the ways of JEHOVAH, but choose to live a life rooted in 100% deceit. Think about that. And you can see it every day. Every day you see it. This embodies the characteristics symbolically, the attributes of the devil. Then we have Satan. Satan is telling you about an adversary, an oppressor. He's an adversary. He's an oppressor. So the spiritual sense of Satan, it is telling you, it underscores who's opposing the spirit and forces to stand against JEHOVAH, his divine order. One who sees Satan as a spirit can enter the influences of man. Speaks to those moments, the individual to sway by negative external influences, enter into temptations, pushing them and act a way that is contrary to God's will. This is what they do. You'll see even in the book of Job where Satan is presented as a member when he was in the heavenly council, challenging Job's faithfulness. That can be understood as a representation of a trial, doubting the adversaries are human, that they face these tests. It's right here in front of us. So they signify the challenges that poses these eternal forces, these eternal struggles that diverge man's from these righteous paths. So this distinction between the devil as men's inherited tendencies and Satan as the influencing of spiritual provides a comprehensive understanding and source of spiritual opposition. So it underscores the idea, the challenges of one's faith that can become from within. Personal choices, inherited tendencies. These internal spiritual influences. So the term devil and Satan is the spiritual sense and understood the difference in facets, the opposition of JEHOVAH's divine purpose, while the devil can symbolize the man initiating tendencies that stray from the righteous path. Satan represents the external forces of the spirit that might lead one astray, both understanding and serves as a reminder to followers of Christ to remain vigilant and rooted in the teaching for the guide of the Spirit of God. This is the point we got to stay focused on. So the devil, or we look at the dragons, angels, termed angels, in the Bible often referred to messengers or servants. So the dragon angels, they're going to be referred to that. So the dragon angels in this context showing you these spiritual entities, the forces of the dragon, rebellious intent against JEHOVAH, the divine order. They symbolize the spiritual adversaries or ideologies contrary to the purpose or the will of the Creator, Yahweh himself. So the road to promote and to propagate the dragon's agenda, which is fundamentally rooted in deception and opposition of the ways of JEHOVAH. Everybody get that? I'm telling you, it's a trip. It's right here. It's right here. Actually, I'm going to tell you what, I'm going to show you something. We're going to look at Wisdom of Solomon. We're going to go back there. Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 2, looking at verse 24. 2:24. It says, Nevertheless, Through envy of the devil came death into the world, and they that do hold to his side do find it. You hold to his side, you're going to find it. You see what it's saying? This passage is aligning with the deceptive ideologies that represents by the dragon and his angels lead to these spiritual death and separation from the purpose of the glory of JEHOVAH. So this cosmic conflict mirrors. Actually, we need to put some more stuff with this. Well, we're going to hold that one there. Let's go to Ephesians chapter 6 and verse 12. In Ephesians, looking at 6:12, and we're going to see something that's really important here. He's telling us, we're going to change the color of that one. It says, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood. You don't wrestle against that. But against principalities, against powers, against the rulers in darkness of the world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. I'll tell you. People will sit there and say whatever they want. But it's that devil that's inside somebody. It's that Satanistic spirit that's right there in them. So when we're looking at this in Revelation chapter 12, verse 7, that's why I tell you it was a war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon fought against his angels. It's right here. Signified the spiritual realm, the platform of divine authority and distinction, is not about physical locations, but it's about dimensional spiritual understandings. Prominence. The battle isn't merely a physical confrontation, but a spiritual clash of ideas, authority, and dominion. Michael, who means who's like God, the chief messenger, stands in the opposition to the dragon, representing the enduring truth of righteousness of the Creator. This battle underlines the internal struggle between truth and deception. Actually, to show you even more so, let me show you something. More so, why he stands there and why Michael holds to what he holds to, we're going to see something in Daniel. I'm going to show you something in Daniel. In Daniel chapter 10, we're going to look at verse 13. And you'll see something here. Why Michael holds such a high prominence. It says, but the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days. But lo, Michael, who's like God, one of the chief princesses, came to help me, and I remained there with the kings of Persia. He's one of the chief princesses. This is why he tells you back over here in Revelation 12:8, and prevail not, neither will their place found any more in heaven. Why? Because Michael took care of this. Michael took care of this. This dragon, his messengers, could not stand against the powers and the authority of righteousness. Their inability to prevail denotes the victory, the divine truth of what they was doing over deceit. Neither was their place found. Neither was their place found anymore in heaven. This separation of glory. There's no more place found there. This is their spiritual demotion. This is a spiritual demotion now. What happened? This is why we look at this all together. And going back to Isaiah, to showing you the spiritual demotion, chapter 14, and we're going to look at verse 12. And that's why he tells you this here. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer? You went against Michael. Son of the morning, how art, A-R-T, in your perfection and beauty cut down to the ground, which did it weaken the nation. They was out there teaching something they wasn't supposed to teach. They was teaching something they was not supposed to teach. And that's why you look at verse 9 over here in Revelation. It says, that great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil, including Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels, his messengers, was cast out with him. Now we got a full understanding of what's going on. Now we got a full understanding of what's going on. The main part of this is you got to remember how he still approached him. See, we can't get rid of that. Because we showed it earlier, but you can't get rid of that. Because it says, so no marvel, for Satan himself is transferred into an angel of light. Therefore, it's no great thing his ministers also be transformed into ministers of righteousness, whose end shall be according to their works. That's why you shouldn't have no issue here. It shouldn't be no issues here. Spiritual understanding of this old serpent is telling you about what's going on. This glory or separation of glory underlines the repercussions of straying from the divine word of truth. So the fact that it was cast down to the earth is telling us the deceptive influences within these worldly realms that we encounter today. These things are going to always continually come at us. We can't get rid of this. In 2nd Esdras, we're going to look at this again. In 2nd Esdras chapter 7, looking at verse 21. And he's telling us why we don't stray. For God has given us strict commandments to such comparing Cain, what they should do to live, even comparing they Cain, including what they should observe to avoid punishment. What we should do to avoid punishment. This captures everything from Revelations chapter 12, verse 7 through all the way through 9. To avoid punishment. There was a war in heaven. The angels fought against the dragon fought against the angel, they prevailed not, neither was there a place found any more in heaven. That great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan was that which deceiveth the world, the whole world, he was cast out. And his messengers were with him. They didn't avoid this punishment. They thought they can do something. So with this fall, we have a thing which we got to look at with this consequences of disobedience. This is what's going on. Because this heavenly conflict, this war in heaven, was subsequent of casting out Lucifer, impacted the world. In understanding the influence, the fall, the heavenly conflict, the earthly ramifications is paramount that offers this profound insight of this framework. The moral fabric of existence, the themes that develop the depth and inherent in obedience, the consequences of the battle between righteousness and rebellion. That's what we're dealing with. So the fall, we have to deal with consequences of disobedience. The fall. And we're going to see how this all structured out. Because we got to see what happened with Lucifer. So the biblical teaching, understanding that obedience of the divine will. So the fall, as described in Genesis, embodies the desired consequences from deviating from God's word. So Adam and Eve, Lucifer and Eve, disobedience in the garden led to spiritual separation from the Creator. Introduced sin into the world. They the ones introduced sin to the world. Everybody understand that? They the ones introduced that. The act of not only affected the spiritual state, but it also set in motion the inherent sinful nature passed down through generations. This is what's going on. They the one introduced this. That's the problem. Let's look at something. I want to show you something where people are going to be kind of shocked to see. We're going to look at this in Genesis chapter 3. And we're going to look at 3. We're going to start at verse 6. And we can't deny it because it's right here in front of us. And when the woman saw that the tree, that this elder was good for food, this doctrine, and it was pleasant to the understanding in the elder to be desired to make one wise, because she thinks she's going to be a god, she took of the fruit, and she did learn of it, and gave also to her husband with her, and he did learn of it. Wow. This is what happens when we want to sit there and not follow the ways of God. And it's telling you right up front what's going on here. And the eyes of them was both open. And they knew they were naked. And he sewed fig leaves together and made themselves aprons. This is interesting. And this is why we couple something with this. Because we always got to put wisdom of Solomon. We always want to get some wisdom from him. Wisdom of Solomon chapter 2, looking at verse 24. He's telling you, he says, nevertheless, through envy of the devil came death into the world, that they do hold to his side do find it. And they found it. Because they was looking for something more. That's what a lot of us do. We're always looking for something more. Oh, it's a higher calling here. We got to go here where people talk this crazy stuff. This crazy stuff. And people, oh, I got this higher learning. We do it like clockwork. We fishing for things that's not there. We're always looking, is there something higher we want to get to? We do this like clockwork. So when we're looking at those scriptures, the same one that we looked at here, we looked at Revelations chapter 12, verse 7 and 9. Chapter 12, starting at verse 7, when this war was in heaven. It provides us the same thing with Isaiah chapter 14, verse 12. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer? Son of the morning, this morning star, detailing his ambition to ascend into the clouds. He's going to be like the Most High. How Lucifer's fall impacted our world. Lucifer's descent from the heavenly realms had profound implications of our world. His influence is marked by deceit and rebellion that manifests at various facets of human existence. His fall brought about not just spiritual degradation, but it also introduces temptation, leading man further away from the light of God. Is what he was doing. Is what he was doing. You can see here where he can't even get around it. We're looking at Genesis chapter 3. We're going to start at verse 1. We're going to just read some verses because it's telling you up front exactly what happened. It says right here. It says, now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field which the Spirit of God had made. And he said unto the woman, yea, have God said, ye should not eat of every tree. You should not learn of every tree that is in the garden. He told us not to. But he challenged that because he wanted to see what we were going to say, what we're going to do. And the woman said unto the serpent, we may learn of the works of the trees of the garden, but the works of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God said, ye shall not eat of it, you shall not learn of it, neither shall you touch it, lest ye die. Really, it's interesting. She knows what's up. She was given the wisdom. But the serpent said unto the woman, ye shall not surely die. So who did they believe? They believed Satan. But God doeth know that the day ye learn thereof, your eyes, your understanding shall be open, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. That was our mistake right there. 100% our mistake. Let's look at something. 100% our mistake. In 2 Corinthians, we're going to look at this in 4:4 and look at something. In 4:4 in 2 Corinthians, it says, in whom the God of this world have blinded the minds of them which believe not, because you don't believe God, lest the light of the glorious gospel, the message of Christ, who is the image of God, should shine upon them. Meaning this in a nutshell. Many of us will sit there and say we know God, we're seeking God, and you're not. You're looking for something more. You're looking for something more. And you want something more. And that makes no sense. This is why people surf around. They surf. They like to get into all kinds of things. They like to have their fingers in a couple of places. This is why so many people are still going to be confused. Because they try to put their fingers in a bunch of places. And this is something they shouldn't be doing. Let's look at something. We're going to drop down to verse 12. Actually, let me read these couple. I'm going to just read something. Let me just move down a little bit. For we preach not ourselves, but Christ, but the anointed way of salvation of the Creator. And ourselves your servants for salvation's sake. For God, who commanded the light to shine out of darkness have shined in our hearts and gave light of the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of salvation of the anointed way. So that's exactly what he's doing. But I want to show you something. Let's drop down to verse 11. And this is where we get a little bit more. For we which live are always delivered unto death for salvation's sake, that the life also of salvation might be made known in our mortal flesh. See, but people are going to have a problem here all the time because they're going to always associate that with man, who God named this man to where he can be a similitude to each and every one of us. But they associate to the man. That's why they sit there and say 100% man, 100% God. And that's not true. He was a prophet. But this here is not talking about this man. This is talking about salvation. So we have to be able to take that once it comes. Actually, let me show you this. Besides that, once this. It tells you, so wherefore the law was our schoolmaster to bring us unto Christ. Once we understand the differences between JEHOVAH or Jesus and understand his name meant salvation and what he was bringing, once we understand that, to bring us unto Christ, that we might be justified by faith, not to be justified by what they were seeing in this man. That was the point. But people still going to be blinded because they're going to always hold on to this man. And it says the life also that salvation might be made known in our mortal flesh. After faith has come, we are no longer under the schoolmaster. We no longer need this symbol. And this is what we done. Let's look at something. In Wisdom of Solomon 7. Wisdom of Solomon chapter 7, verse 17. He tells us this. For he had given me certain knowledge of the things that are, namely, to know how the world was made and the operations of the elements. Exactly what we need to be doing. Exactly what we need to be knowing, exactly what we need to be doing. Because we got to know about these elements. This is why it becomes so important on what we're doing, because we need to know what the elements are. Let's look at something. Because this has everything why Lucifer misused these elements. But we're gonna see that all in here. Even though we're seeing it now, but we're gonna see more of it. In Romans chapter 12, we're gonna pick it up at verse 6. And you see, having then gifts differing according to the grace that is given unto us, that is given to us, whether prophecy, let us prophesy according to the appropriation of faith, or ministry, let us wait on our ministry, or he that teacheth on teachings. It's telling us exactly what we need to be doing. Exactly what we need to be doing. These spiritual gifts holds a bigger thing here. And we find that these gifts is always there. So the same thing is we're going to see something that's here. In 1 Corinthians, we're going to look at chapter 12 and verse 4. These gifts. Because it's the diversity of these gifts. It says now, the diversity of gifts, but the same Spirit. And there are differences of administration, but the same Lord, the same Creator. There's a diversity of operation, but the same God who worketh all in all. He's telling us exactly what's going on. When we jump down to verse 11, it says, but all these worketh that one and self same Spirit, dividing to every man severally as he will. This is why it gets so important. He has given this certain knowledge, namely to know how the world was made. So when we're looking at this in Romans, we want Romans 12 and 6 through 8. Having these gifts differing according to the grace which was given, whether of prophecy, are prophesied according to the appropriation of faith. This comes with responsibility. This comes with a responsibility of doing something. Meaning this, the balance using gifts, God's glorious verse in self-glorification. While many of us receive these spiritual gifts, the testament of JEHOVAH, benevolence and trust, it comes with the responsibility of ensuring that they are used righteously. That's the primary purpose of these gifts, to edify the followers of Christ, to bring glory to JEHOVAH, not to the individual. To bring glory to JEHOVAH, not to the individual. When these gifts are misused or channeled to self-glorification, it distorts the divine purpose of God. That's what it does. In fact, let's look at something. In 1 Peter, and we're seeing everything, well, you're seeing most of what's going on with Lucifer. It says, every man have received the gift, even so minister the same one to another as good stewards in the manifold grace of God. If any man speaketh, let him speak as the oracles of God. If any man minister, let him do as of the ability which God giveth. This is the problem, because you have a lot of men that sit there and they'll teach and and they teach without the ability what God gave them. This is a big problem. Many men out there teach many different doctrines, and they teaching not according to knowing what they teaching. This is why we hold to what we hold to. And it says that God in all things may be glorified through salvation of the anointed way, to whom be praise and dominion forever and ever. That's why this is important. That's why this is so important. So the history of the scripture shows that that you see self-worship leads to one astray, because they want to sit there and they want to be in the limelight, certain things. So ones that seek to be the beacons of light serve as a cautionary tale illustrating the misuse, misdirection of one's gift. It's significant that one can lead to a downfall. This is why we have so many problems even within the Hebrew community, why we have so many issues. Because everybody want to be the top dog. In Sirach chapter 10, but we're going to look at verse 12. The beginning of pride is when one departed from God. The beginning of pride is one departed from God. His heart turned away from his maker. Turn from his maker. For pride is the beginning of sin. For pride is the beginning of sin. It shall pour out abominations. And for that reason the Lord brought upon them strange calamities, overthrew them utterly. The Lord cast down, exactly, that's why Lucifer got cast down. And the Creator cast down the thrones of proud princesses and set up the meek in their stead. That's why he did what he did. This is why he did what he did. Lucifer couldn't be there. Why? Because he was proud. Based on his beauty, he thought he was all this, that, and a bag of chips. In 2 Corinthians chapter 10, looking at verse 17, 18, he's telling, but he that glorieth, let him glory in the Lord. You glory in the Creator. But you have so many people who want to glory in themselves. They want to pump themselves up. They want to let you know they're the pump up. You pump me up. You put me on the pedestal. I'm the one who should be on the pedestal, not God. If you glory, let him glory in the Creator. For not he that condemneth himself is approved, but whom the Lord condemneth. It's emphasizing one who commends himself, who's approved, but the Lord is sitting there seeing what's going on. Remember, spiritual gift is divinely bestowed and demands profound sense of responsibility and humility is incumbent upon the receipt to ensure this serves as the conduit of JEHOVAH's glory, perpetually channeling the gifts of edification and modification, ensuring that these instruments, these self-exaltations, understanding the balance is critical to walk in righteous path and fulfilling the divine purpose intending for these gifts to be really going through. So through this, we're always going to have a struggle. Through this, we're always going to have a struggle with flesh versus the spirit. Always. And this, as we come into a close with this, we want to understand how this all works out. So from one onset to creation, the followers of Christ, we have to watch these snares, these ensnares, these perpetual tug of wars, these senseless conflicts between physical and spiritual, between temporal desires and flesh, the internal calling of spirit. So when you have a desires of flesh, real world examples and their consequences, the desires of flesh are manifold and manifesting themselves in different various forms. They encompasses not just the carnal desire, but it also tied with pride, envy, greed, and wrath. These are real world examples that abound, that allure the material wealth, leading individuals away from spiritual pursuits. Everybody get that? Everybody understand what I'm saying? This quest for power, dominance, expanse of humanity, seeking this temporal pleasures often leads to this pain and emptiness. That's what's going to happen. In fact, the same thing what we look at is here in Galatians chapter 5, verse 19. He tells us, for the works of the flesh are made known, which are these: adultery, fornication, uncleanness, lasciviousness, idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, variance, ill emotion, wrath, strife, sedition, heresy, envying, murders, drunkenness, rivalings, and such like, which I tell you before, and I told you in times past, they which do such things shall not inherit the kingdom of God. These are the desires of flesh, real world things. You're not going to get around this. But people are going to still try to hold on. They're going to try to repurpose things in their head and say, no, this is what I do, but I'm good at doing this. No, it's not going to happen. In Romans chapter 8 and verse 6, it says, for to be carnally minded is death, but to be spiritually minded is life and peace. Many of us, that's why I tell you all the time, many of us here is going to bust hell wide open. Why? Because no matter what, you're going to repurpose it in your head. You're going to repurpose this in your head. Let's build on something. Let's build on something. We're going to look at Sirach in Sirach chapter 5 and verse 3. And it tells us here, it says, and say not, who shall control me for my works? Who shall control me for my works? For the Lord shall surely avenge thy pride. Yeah, exactly the point. Exactly the point. Let's go up one. Follow not thy own mind and thy strength, to walk in the way of thy heart. Yeah. That's why he's saying, who's going to control me? These are things we can't get around. These are things that are going to continually happen. Continually happen. In James, looking at 4 and 4, it says, adulterers and adulteress, know we not that the friendship of the world is enmity with God. Friendship of the world is enmity with God. This is what we're going through. Friendship with the world is enmity to God. and therefore will be a friend of the world, then you're an enemy of God. This is clear. This is 100% clear. This is why it's so important we need to understand exactly what is happening. Seeking these spiritual practices, natures of spiritual growth, it transcends the trampling of flesh that ascends towards the spirit, requires deliberate efforts and steadfastness, firstly immersing oneself in God's word, aiding in gaining clarity and wisdom. It tells us this as we sit there and we look at these things. We'll see this also in Psalms 119. 105 tells us. It says, thy word is the lamp unto my feet, to my desires, and a light unto my path. This, when we seek in consistent prayer and communion with Jehovah, offer guidance and fortitude. Fasting, often overlooked, in the potent tool that's shedding the weight of worldly desires, drawing us closer to the spiritual realm, surrounding oneself with like-minded believers for mutual edification. Supported. Main thing here is important. It's vital. In fact, we can build on that there. We can look at something in Romans. Romans, you see, Paul talks a lot of things that helps us to understand a lot more. He's telling us, be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by renewing of the mind, that ye may prove that what is that good and acceptable in the perfect will of God. That's what we need to be pointing to. That's what we need to be focused on. This offers profound guidelines. And when we do that, we can do good works. We can do arms. Arms is nothing but good deeds. But people will mix arms up and talking about arms is money. Arms ain't never been money. Arms is no part of the Bible showing you money. We're going to look at some of that to get a better understanding, because through your good deeds, you can sit there and you can practice the good works that you need to have. We'll find this some in Tobit. Tobit chapter 12, and we're going to look at verse 8. Prayer is good. Same way we're saying. Fasting, including arms, is righteousness. But you'll see many men in many different denominations, they'll sit there and say this is money. They're showing you they don't know the Bible. Because all they're saying is good deeds. And good deeds is righteousness. Love, joy, happiness, long suffering. Those are arms. And a little righteousness is better than much unrighteousness. It's better to give arms to do good deeds than to lay up gold. Right up front. Right up front. But he tells more here in verse 9. And this is why so many Christians going to bust hell wide open, because they mix this all. It says, for arms do it deliver thee from death. They believe money deliver from death. That's what they say. Lying on God. But it's saying good deeds deliver thee from death, and thou shalt purge away sin, all sins, and they exercise good deeds in righteousness shall be filled with life. That's what this says. That's what this says. Gold and worldly wealth often seems to be a symbol of worldly prosperity, but it's temporal achievements. And they lay up. That's why it said, that's why he's sitting there in verse 8. This is what they want to do. They lay up gold. Reminiscent of storing treasures on earth. However, arms, good deeds, are eternal significant spiritual intricacies, and acts of kindness, charity, and good deeds surpass value of worldly riches. These actions align with God that bear eternal fruits, these eternal works. So arms deliver thee from death and purge away all sin. 100% true. For the spiritual level, death represents the separation from Jehovah, a spiritual void or darkness. but by performing good deeds, aligns themselves closely with God and with the purpose, thereby avoiding spiritual death. Furthermore, good deeds cleanse one's spirit, purging away transgression and impurity that distance them from our Creator himself. This is clear. Why? Verse 9 tells you this in Tobit. For arms do deliver thee from death, and shall purge away all sins. You can't get around it. It's right there. It's right there. Let's look at this, because most people still want to store up their treasures here. They want to store up their treasures here. And that's where our problem becomes. In Matthew, we're going to look at Matthew chapter 6, but we're going to look at verse 19. Might go to 20, but it says, lay not up for yourselves treasures upon earth. How many of us do that? How many of us is guilty of that? How many of us is bold enough to put that in there? We sit there and we try to, well, I want to build generational wealth with money. How many of us done did that? How many of us have said this? We want to build generational wealth. That's what people teach. I want to build generational wealth. Really, that's interesting. How you don't want to build up spiritual wealth? Teaching your children what's required of God, being wealthy in heaven rather than on earth. This is our problem. This is what we do. We good at doing this. We try to build up generational wealth. We're going to have this. And my kids, my kids, they ain't going to have to work. Really? Temporal. A lot of them going to go off and squander it. But when you build them up with that knowledge of God, you can build up that wealth in heaven. It says, lay not up yourselves treasure upon earth, where moths and rust do corrupt, and with thieves break through and steal. But he's telling you something that's clear in verse 20. He's telling you clear in 20. It says, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven with this knowledge, where neither moth nor rust do corrupt, and where thieves do not break through nor steal. For where your treasure is, on earth or in heaven, there where will your heart be also. So if you're sitting there and all your wealth is in money on earth, that's where your heart is. It's not in heaven, it's on earth. Meaning, you ain't fit for the kingdom. See, people don't even like to see, they don't even want to hear that. That's the thing of it. No, you're not fit. If your heart is in the things that is on earth, that is in the money on earth, then your heart is for the things of the earth. And so when everything is over, you will be in the lake of fire. These are very simple, clear things, not hard to understand. But people won't tell you this. People won't tell you this because they try to get your money. They want your money, they want this, they want that from you. Let's look at something. We'll look at something. We'll build on that. We're going to look at something in James chapter 2, looking at verse 26. He tells us, for as the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without works is dead also. Yeah, that's a true statement. Emphasizing the importance of righteous actions accompanying faith. But if you put faith in everything that's on earth, guess what? Moth and thieves can take it. Which tells you the same thing. Prayer is good and fasting and alms is righteous. We have to understand a lot of this, and where we part these actions, which brings us closer to Jehovah, ensuring our spiritual enrichment in our lives, that we should have our entrusting sense in what we're doing. So when we're looking at this, when we're looking at Matthew chapter 10, verse 8, I want to show you something there. In Matthew 10:8, I want to show you something. And this tells, it says, heal the sick and cleanse the lepers, raise the dead, and cast out devils. Freely ye have received, freely give. So freely you have got the word, you freely give the word out. But I guarantee you can go to a lot of places and they're going to sit there and they say, if you like what you heard, if you enjoyed it, if it touched your heart, give a donation, give some money. But you freely received it. you freely give it away. But if your hearts enjoyed it, they say, leave a little something, something. Write a check. Drop some dollars. We got an ATM machine where you can go get some money. Freely you have received, freely give. That's what the scriptures say. But I promise you, a lot of people here is still going to go to these camps. They're still going to keep going back to it. So righteously, they should go to hell. I'm very upfront about these things. And it says in Galatians chapter 5, verse 16, it says, and say to them, walk in the spirit, and ye shall not fulfill the lust of your flesh. But people are still going to do this. So what are the lessons learned from Lucifer? Warning and guidance that we learn from this. What lessons have we learned? See, Lucifer was a transformation from a light bearer to an adversary. Keep that in mind. So that's what you should have. Lucifer's transformation was from light bearer to adversary. Serves as a powerful reminder of the potential of a parallel of pride, disobedience, and self-glorification, drawing the lesson, the story that offers an opportunity in the spectrum of spiritual growth and fortified relationship with JEHOVAH. So we know that. He was a light bearer, went to adversary. That's what we learned one thing, based on his promptness. Recognizing temptation, Lucifer allured the charm as present. So we see this here. That's why we got to keep everything there. What happened with Lucifer? In Isaiah chapter 14, verse 12. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer? How art thou fallen? And thou art in the perfection and beauty is cut down to the ground, which doeth weaken thee. For thou hast said in thy heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit on the mount of the congregation on the side of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds, and I will be like the Most High. I will be like God. And all I have to do is come a certain way. All I have to do is come a certain way, and I can get away with it. And marvel, for Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light. I can come this way, and I can get away with it. So with this, we understand what's happening. This is why so many of us will stay deceived. So many of us will always be deceived, no matter what. In James chapter 1, looking at verse 12, it says, wisdom is given as the man that endures temptation. For when he is tried, because you are going to be tried, he shall receive the crown of life, for the Creator hath promised to them that love him. If you promise God, he promises you. Let no man say he is tempted. I am tempted of God, for God cannot be tempted with evil, neither tempted any man. For every man is tempted when he is drawn away of his own lust and enticed. That's what you're drawn away from. You're drawn away on your own lust. And when lust have conceived it, bringing forth sin, and when it's finished, bringing forth death, based on your own fault. Your own fault. This is what we're learning from Lucifer. As is mentioned, this offers insight that the birth of temptation and the consequences therefore emerge from God's word, which comes into us. We see the same thing in Psalms. We just look at Psalms and beat a little bit more. Psalms 119 and verse 119. I believe we have verse 11. I believe we need verse 11. Yeah, that word is hidden in my heart, that I might not sin against thee, is the key. So when we're speaking of this leadership, we need to understand what's going on. We need to demonstrate the importance of reflecting upon Lucifer's transition, sheds light on reality, and what we need to do. We'll see this here again in Titus, the same thing as we continually move forward. Titus We're going to see this in chapter 1, verse 7. We're going to go down to verse 9, verse 7. As it says, for a bishop must be blameless as the steward of God, not self-willed, not soon angry, to given wine, nor stinker, or given for filthy lucre. This is key. But be a lover of hospitality, a lover of good men, sober, just, holy, separated, temperate, holding fast to the faithful word, as he has been taught, that he may be able by sound doctrine both to exhort and to conceive the gainsayers. So we're understanding what the importance is, but the biggest importance is what we're going to see in 1 John. 1 John tells us everything. 1 John chapter 1, looking at verse 4. 1 John chapter 4, verse 1. It says, beloved, believe not every spirit, but try the spirits, whether they are of God, because many false prophets are gone out into the world. These things are there. So when we reflecting on the path, we draw the conclusion that the story of Lucifer is not about dwelling on his fall, but rather understanding the underlying reasons for it. Everybody get that? Not dwelling on his fall, but we have to understand the reason, the underlying reason for it. So we need to gird ourselves against the similarities of pitfalls that can come against us. This journey demands continuous spiritual vigilance, JEHOVAH's guidance, and surrounding ourselves with the genuine leaders who prioritize God's will over worldly desires. So through these practices, one can navigate through the spiritual realm in confidence. So as we reflect on these, I'm going to tell you some verses to make sure you go back and you study. So reflecting the spiritual path of Lucifer, it becomes abundantly clear that the descendants from the heavenly realms, the ambition, that's profound distinction of the creator intent. So I want you to make sure you write down a few things, because what I'm going to end up doing, I'm going to put the preceptor up later, but I'm going to have the preceptor to go back in the back. I'm going to end up going in the back most likely this week to where we can do it, because I don't want to keep you that long, because right now we're almost at 6:30 my time, and I know that's 9:30 a lot of other people's time, so I'm not going to tie you up and try to push that out, but we will pick that up and we will go through this and make sure. And same thing with the people all who said no, I'm going to make sure I set up a teaching to where we can go into the Zoom and we're going to get that. But I want you to write down Isaiah chapter 14, verse 12 through 15, because this provides a chilling account of Lucifer's ambition. He aspired to ascend above the heights of the clouds and make himself like the Most High. This is a powerful ambition act. Was his undoing leading him to be cast down to the earth. Yet Lucifer's story does not end with just this explosion here. We also see in Revelation chapter 12, verse 7 through 9, this was a great war in heaven. Accumulating the dragon, Satan or Lucifer was cast out. With him his messengers and his angels, who subscribed to his doctrine, and who also was thrown down. This point is a compilation that aligns ourselves with the doctrines and belief that was contrary to JEHOVAH's teachings, that was susceptible to the similarity, and now we tied to the consequences. The same as another verse I need you to make sure you get is Jude chapter 1, verse 6. You got to study them all together. This reminds of an angel who did not keep their position of authority, but they abandoned their proper dwelling that have been kept in darkness. So when we see this, we'll see 2 Esdras, the last verse that I need you to study with it, is 2 Esdras chapter 40, verse 30 and 31. This describes the wicked being that restrained, but not forever. They are held in check until their iniquity reaches the full measure. It serves as a cautionary lesson, the lure to worldly doctrines. No matter how enticing comes this grave cost. So the tale of Lucifer is not a mere history or a celestial narrative, but it's a living testament for all JEHOVAH's creation. So it serves as a pungent reminder and an adherence that the teaching and guidance of the Creator, the Shepherd of Israel, and the only way to navigate the atrocities and spiritual journey of existence Any deviations from these paths is driven by pride, and seduction of worldly powers leads to a spiritual exile, and stands fast in JEHOVAH, seeking his guidance continually, and one remains in his realms, glorifying and safeguarding the pitfalls that can befall us as Lucifer have done. So we want to make sure that each and every one of us follow these things, study those, understand it. And as I said, I'm going to be going back over this. I'm going to be looking at the people who said no to where I can email them. And if I don't have your email, I will seek them. I will actually ask for them next time on our next teaching to where I make sure I get them. But hopefully you guys have some clear understanding now based on Lucifer, the fallen angel. We have a clarity on it and why, what happened, and how he fell and why he fell. This is his messengers. So hopefully that each and every one of you got some clarity. And as we continue, I say until next time, we should meet again. We should be getting together. And actually, I do have one announcement I do want to make. This weekend is going to be very important. After the teaching, we're going to be coming back because we're going to be speaking about the book in Zoom before we actually open it up for everybody. So make sure you set that for after the lesson of this Sabbath day, to where we're going to be in there speaking on the book, but then we're going to show you everything. We're going to do a big opening on it to where everybody can come in on it. So with that, I say to each and every person, until next time, shalom.